computer. All right, so today I think I'm going to focus on two things. First, I'm going to focus on both the new things with regards to our with file reading, but also I figure I'm going to focus more on some as well as fundamentals and similar to things similar to what you would have to do for lab 7. So as you know, this is spring break is fast approaching, and you deserve a break. So be sure to take it. I will try to adjust my homework accordingly because I don't really expect people to do much actual work over spring break. I certainly don't expect myself to be doing much actual work over spring break. If you need me over spring break, please send me an email and I will do my best to get to meet with you if you need it. That's if I can get. I'll be down in Georgia for the break most likely. So visiting family and relatives. If you do travel like I am doing, please be sure to get tested when before you meet with family and when you get back. Just as a matter of precaution. I'll be driving because I do that. It's about a 13-hour drive. So anyway, also noteworthy is that Elden Ring launches today. Woohoo! So yeah. Super hyped. Been looking forward to that. So, now that said, we are going to be talking about video games, specifically the most successful franchise of all time, which is the most successful media franchise of all time, people. Not Mario.
Tetris.
Not Tetris. Tetris was one of the best-selling video games of all time, but it's not really a franchise, and it did get dethroned by Minecraft, which is not the best-selling franchise of all money-making franchise of all time.
Grand Theft Auto.
Nah, not the Grand Theft Auto.
Does it have to be a game?
It is a video game. Oh, yes. I have no idea, but almost certainly not. It is Pokemon. Pokemon is the biggest. Yeah, if we look on Wikipedia, Pokemon franchise. Sorry, let's see, biggest media franchises. Yeah, Pokemon beats out total revenue $110 billion between licensed merchandise, video games, box office. Hello Kitty, he beats out Mickey Mouse.
Wow.
Mickey Mouse. And Star Wars. So yeah, Pikachu means serious business, people. Which is also my full justification for why I'll be using a Pokemon-based example for this, because that's pretty big. I mean, look, the stuff is addictive, and their newest game is fun, from what I understand. Like, the other ones were fun, lowercase fun, but Pokemon Legends Arceus, from my understand, was like the shakeup that the franchise needed, and it is like capital F fun. That's pretty nice. So with regards to that, for those of you who don't know, basically, Pokemon takes place in a world where you capture animals, and make them fight each other, and somehow that's legal and okay. And it's also okay to go for 10-year-olds to go on unsupervised cross-country journeys on foot, capturing these animals and then fighting in big tournaments. It's I guess it is a world that I don't think a lot of world building ideas were thought completely through. For those of you who also don't know, Pokemon is short for pocket monsters, despite the fact that they do not, in fact, fit in your pocket and instead fit in Pokeballs. Okay, but enough about that. Okay, so Pokemon it is a pretty addictive game, or at least various parts of it, and I started playing back when it was out as Pokemon Red. So I've been playing since the first gen. And I'm a big fan of it because the competitive scene is actually kind of fun. There's a lot of strategy and stuff, especially since the big competitive scene is 2-on-2, which is, pretty rad. Now so the way these pocket monsters work is that there's tons of these ones, and this is a list of Pokemon.
Sorry, we can't see the screen.
Oh, come on. Really? Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Laptops into both. Come on. Oh, because I'm not plugged in, of course. Yeah, I'm totally 100% on top of this. Totally not checked out and waiting to get home so I can play Elden Ring, right? Okay. So anyway, so Pokemon, there's different types of Pokemon here. There's about like 700. Is there close to 800 now? I don't know. Let's scroll down and find out. Woo, more than 800. Wow. Oh, 900 at this point. Wow. Okay. So anyway, there's tons and tons of Pokemon. And at this point, I'm, it starts becoming, a bit weird if you actually know them all. But anyway, there's a Pokemon basically are it is an RPG game. Basically, it's a turn-based RPG game where basically players take turns choosing moves. The order of moves is determined by speed. Strength of the move is determined by your attack, and how much damage you take is determined by defense. There's two types of attacks: special attacks and attacks, and defense is according to your HP is basically how much life you have. So there's possible for Pokemon to have extremely high life, but very low defense, and vice versa. Not that any of that is necessary for you to know, just know that there's these 6 stats, which basically govern how strong Pokemon are, right? For instance, the fan favorite Charizard has a pretty darn high special attack and a pretty high speed, making him combined with his moveset, makes him fairly usable in competitive play. At least if you're with with Gigantamaxing, which is a completely other mechanics that we don't have the time to go over here. But the fun thing about Pokemon is that good players do find ways to throw an oddball Pokemon who nobody thinks is any good into their team and completely own with it, which is pretty fun. So there's tons of these Pokemon, and it figures out their total and their average statistics. So in other words, what is the total amount that they add up to, and then the average, which gives you kind of a relative baseline strength for for various Pokemon. For instance, we see that some of the more powerful Pokemon have extremely high average stats. Gallade is my favorite Pokemon. So anyway, it is a bit much though to copy and paste this all into a file and do to copy paste this into a Python script and do organizing on it and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this entire page of stuff, which will, let's just get the mouse going. Could have done this beforehand, I'm sure, but hey, it didn't take too long. And let's go ahead and grab all these and say Control C. And so now I've copied everything into the clipboard. And now I'm going to open up VS Code, or you can open up Notepad or idle. It doesn't really matter. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a new file using that, and I'm going to paste it. And there I've got the stats. Notice it didn't what it didn't copy was the picture. That's okay. It didn't need to copy the picture. It copied basically the file name of the picture over here. Okay, so what we've got over here is essentially a file that I can read. Now, part of the issue is that we do have some, let's see. Oh, this is going to be an issue because of the megas, isn't it? Ooh. Oh, and the other forms because of these parentheses. Well, that's going to make file parsing very interesting. So the idea here is that we've got this file of data, and we could ostensibly analyze it. Let's see. I'm just wondering if I've got a better file that I can possibly use instead. Let's see. That's one that's a bit more sanitized because I don't want to have to try to go through with this. GitHub, Classroom, ITP. Let's see, and I think this was in fall 2020, I definitely did. Yeah, Pokemon.csv. So I kind of made a file of this already. Yeah, nice. So I did some fun kind of, I did some rearranging of this file a couple years ago. And I can go ahead and share this with you. You'll just want to go to www. If you want to download this self and follow along, go to www.github.com/abrosen. That's my username. And I'll put it on the screen in big font, /classroom. And that will bring you to my class. So that's going to bring you to the link that I have on Canvas, by the way. Okay. So you can also find this link on Canvas. Let me go ahead and just kind of just paste it so everybody can see. 1 second. All right. github.com/abrosen/classroom. Right. You can also get there by going to your Canvas, and under the important links, there's a link to here. Okay. So what I can do is that if you hit the view code, if that's there or the like, you'll want to hit the ITP folder, which is Intro to Python. And then I did this example back in 2020 and then completely forgot about it, which is a terrible tragedy because it was good. Fall 2020. And then there's a Pokemon.csv file. So I will drop a link to this directly in Zoom, as well as on the Discord chat for people not in Zoom. All right, and now to download the file itself, you'll have to hit the raw over here to get. Okay. And then you can download it by hitting Control-S or by right-clicking and save link as, save page as, save as on Mac. So just downloading this file. If you can't do it, it's okay to just follow along. But the point about this was that somebody went through and put commas instead of spaces. So that would be a proper comma separated value file. So that would be easier for us to parse. Now, I'll go ahead and save this into, we're just going to go ahead and put this where I'm going to do my code. So let's go ahead and do that in GitHub, Classroom, ITP, new folder, Spring 2022. And then Pokemon.csv will get saved in here. Okay. And now I'm going to create, so what we have here now is a CSV file. So what the heck is a CSV file? It's just a text file. It really is just a text file. But the CSV tells us we want to open it in Excel or some other spreadsheet program. Okay. But it is just a text file. Watch, I can open it in the basic Microsoft program for opening stuff, which is Notepad, and it opens up just fine in Notepad. Okay, it's just a text file, meaning that it's human readable, meaning that we can use it. Okay, but if we open it, double click it and open it in Excel or whatever equivalent program we have for dealing with spreadsheets, it opens up as a table, which is nice and formatted for us. And we look at it, it says, hey, we've got num1, num2, Pokemon, and then HP. So we've got this first line over here, which tells us about all those statistics and stuff, right? This is the guide for our table, and then num1 and num2. num1 being the number, and then the second number being the number that was accompanied with the picture. Then we've got the name and the various statistics. So now there are libraries that exist for working with these things, but we're not going to use any today. Now for this one, because it's already open, I'm going to use VS Code, which is a super powerful text editor. It's free and open source by Microsoft. Yay, Microsoft, for being good at and supporting the open source community and creating a bunch of free tools. VS Code is really good. If you learn how to use it, you can use it basically through your entire programming career without any other tools. That said, there are some tools that are better for working for some programming languages than others. Like I find that, oh, you definitely don't want to save it as a PDF. That is the opposite of fine. That is the opposite of fine. That is not fine. You need to save it as you have to save it. And the way you would have saved it as a PDF is by trying to print it. You have to save it like you did on Tuesday. Right click, download it, save page, download and save page as. You cannot download it as a PDF. It has to be a text, something readable by humans. Okay. So anyway, IntelliJ is good for Java, but I find that this is a good tool for just opening and running stuff, a good general use tool. So I'm going to go ahead and save a file. I'm going to save this new file. I'm going to call it Pokemon Reader, and I'm going to put it in let's see, Documents, GitHub, Classroom, ITP, fall 2022. Sorry, spring 2022, and I'll call it Pokemon Reader, assuming I can spell, .py, and that will save it as a Python file. And now that automatically tells VS Code. Now, again, you don't have to download VS Code. You can do this all in idle, which is perfectly fine. VS Code has just some really cool features that are useful, like autocomplete, which are nice, but idle, you can do everything in this class in idle. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to open my file. So open, and because I put this in the same folder as I did, and like we did last time, it was important for us to put this in the same folder. So I'm going to open up Pokemon.csv, and we're going to open it in read mode. And I'm going to go ahead and try to make sure that that works. So I'm going to call, and I'm just going to call it data today. Data is equal to. And now let's go ahead and I'm just going to print a done message just to show that it is done. So now I'm going to go ahead and run this as a Python file. And it says no such file or directory. Okay, so did I save it in the wrong place? Pokemon.csv. Let's go ahead and check the open folder. Oh, you select this folder and see. Yes, save. Let's see. Is it in here? Pokemon.csv. So let's see. Now, oh, seems to work just fine. Yep, done. Okay, so maybe it was because I was running it in a weird way. That's the other thing. It acts like an IDE, which sometimes means that the files have to be opened up in the directory that you have to open up the directory in here sometimes, I think. I don't know. IDEs can be weird rather than just straight text editors. Okay, so we've gone ahead and confirmed that it works. So what we're going to do now is that I can go ahead and just print it out by reading the file. Data.read, right? That reads the entire file and turns it into a string. And let's go ahead and print it out. And boom. Okay, looks like we did it looks like it was, aha. But it didn't read everything, right? It cut off after Steelix, or specifically Mega Steelix in 209. And my file doesn't end there, does it? So let's look up the documentation for read. Read Python file. Okay, and then doc. Okay. So let's see, file object, returning that, and then read size, which reads in some quantity data. When size is omitted, the entire contents will be returned. It's your problem if the file is twice as large. So it should have read the entire thing. Maybe it just didn't like to print out the entire thing all at once. Not sure. Yes.
This happened
You can only get to print chapter 1.
Yeah,
Okay, that's interesting. It might be. Now let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and so for consistency's sake, I'm going to open this up in idle because I know what's going on here. It doesn't seem like it, but we're printing out a lot of text, and so I'm wondering if that's just a different way of handling it. So boop, Spring 2022. So we open it up in here, run module, squeeze lines. Yeah, it just prints out all of them. Yeah, I think what's going on here is that it didn't want to print out all of them. It just kind of, I think over here, what it did is that it just kind of limited the output to being. I think what's going on in here, this is a problem with VS Code and not with Python, okay? And not with the code. I think this is basically because this is a buffer of things, and there's only so much memory in it. So we could ostensibly increase the size of this so that I could print out more per line. But I think that's what's going on here. So settings, buffer, maximum number of lines. Let's go ahead and increase that to 10,000, see what happens. Yeah, there we go. See, it's a problem with VS Code. Doesn't seem like it, but basically these terminals, they're old school. They only hold so much. All right. And let's go ahead and see terminal. Okay, terminal, and let's see font size. So 36 for that one, and the okay, and then 30, and then let's go with 30 over here for the font size, and then for the terminal, the integrated terminal, we'll do 32. There we go. That should be much easier for us to read now. There we go. Okay, great. So now what we're going, so now we've been able to read the entire thing. Okay. So, but reading it and printing it out is only so useful. If we want to do analysis on it, we need to, read it up. So let's figure out what's the Pokemon that has the highest HP. Okay. So that's going to be our first objective, figuring out what Pokemon has the highest HP, which I believe is Blissey. So these values, because these values are from anywhere between 0 to 255. So what we're going to do is that we need a way to basically read each line by line. So let's do that. Let's call and say basically turn data into, let's see. Let's go ahead and let's go and just analyze this line by line. So lines is equal to data dot read lines. Okay. And now if I print out the lines, let's see what happens. Print lines, you'll see that what happens here is that I've got this big giant list now. So now let me go ahead and see for line in lines, or for each Pokemon in lines, print that Pokemon. Okay, so and we see that as printing out each Pokemon. So remember, there's two big ways to read a file. Read gives you the entire file, gives it to you all the string, and this splits up the strings by line. It reads each line one at a time. And now we've created a giant list with each thing in that line being part of the line. Sorry, with each line in the file being an item in the list. So now how in the world do we analyze this? Well, what we're going to be using is the fact that each piece of this data, each line has multiple pieces of data. It has the Pokemon number, it has the name of the Pokemon, and it has the stats. HP, so HP, attack, defense, right? You can check the CSV file if you forget what they are. Yes.
So after how does it become this?
Went ahead and automatically turned them into a list.
Oh, wow.
Read lines automatically does.
So are there like just lines, one big list?
It is one big list. Here, let me scroll back up. It's here. So this is Golbat is an item in this list. Then Oddish, then Gloom. That's one item. They're separated by commas.
Oh,
So it's one big list of strings. Okay, and now I went ahead and printed them all out individually.
okay.
So for Pokemon in law, so here, right, this is just file reading. Now I have just a big list of strings, just like we were seeing with these examples. Hello, comma, world. That's basically the exact kind of data type we're dealing with as line that lines is. Just they happen to be bigger and have the actual data. So all of these stats and data in the line are separated by commas. That's what it means to be a comma separated value in a CSV file. So that means that if we wanted to analyze it, we can split that up. Let's go ahead and see what happens if we call split, which is a thing we do on a string. And then, so I want to split on commas. You tell it what string you want to split on. And that means I want to divide the string up. And it divides it up into a list. So now what we can see here is that we've got the Pokemon Wooloo, right? We see that we've got each string, rather than being one big line, it's split up. It's split up into 831 and 831 and Wooloo, and then its stats. Make sense? So splitting is this useful tool that you've hopefully been exposed to, which allows you to take a string and turn it into a list of strings. So for each item in the list, I went ahead and turned that item into a list because it actually helps us. Because everything is formatted the exact same way. Now, there is going to be an error that will crash this that I'm approaching soon, but this is intentional on my part. It's okay. So now what we can do is that we've got these numbers, right? We've got this number over here, this number over here, this over here, and then this. This number over here, which is index 0, 1, 2, 3. Index 3 is our HP. So all we have to do to find the biggest HP, the Pokemon with the biggest HP, is base that decision off of index 3. So first thing we'll do is that we can say, let's go ahead and say Pokemon is equal to Pokemon.split. That will replace the string with the list. And then I can say print Pokemon 2 to print the name out. And then Pokemon 3 to print out just the HP stat. Okay. So how do I figure out what the biggest is? Well, I'll go ahead and say biggest HP is equal to 0, right? And biggest, and let's go with, biggest HP mon is equal to something is equal to this. So we'll store both the name and the number for the HP. This is where the error is coming up, by the way. It's a small error that we will be able to work around though. So we split it. And then what we do is that what we want to do is that basically we should set, we can, now that we have this, we can say, create variables around this. Name is equal to Pokemon 2 and HP is equal to Pokemon 3. Okay. And now if HP is greater than biggest HP, so in other words, if the HP, so this is just classic finding the maximum. If the HP of the Pokemon I'm currently looking at is bigger than the biggest HP I've marked down, then that should become the new biggest HP. And I'll save the name as well so that we actually know who we're talking about. Okay. And aside from the aforementioned error that's about to occur, this is it. This is everything I need. And now it says greater than sign. Okay, sorry, this is 2 errors then. Okay, not supported between strings and ints. Oh, right, HP, right? What do I have to do? I have to convert HP into an int, right? Because everything is a string currently. Okay, which will cause another error. Specifically, a value has occurred. Cannot convert HP into base 10. Now you might be thinking, I have no idea what's going on here. Is HP referring to this variable? Is something wrong with that variable? But you'll notice that the HP here is capitalized, meaning it's trying to convert the string HP into an integer. But the HP is over here. Why would there be an HP over here? Because at the very top, we have this guide. So first line, what we're trying to do is that it takes this and tries to convert that into an integer, right? Because it's reading every single line, right? So that's an intentional error because it's very common to experience. Even doesn't matter how many years of programming experience you're going to have, you're going to occasionally make a mistake like this where you grab your data and, oh, right, I accidentally read in the legend for the data as well. Okay, so the easiest way to get around that is to either you can modify your data file, which I feel is, I try my best if I'm analyzing data not to touch that file, not to clean it up there, right? It just feels not the greatest way. So the best way to do that is, since that's only the first line, we should skip the first line, which I can do over here, believe it or not, by doing a slice, which means everything but index 0, which is that first line, that legend line. So up to, but including the end. So if we run it now, we should not get any errors. Oh, right. What's going on here? It's a done. Oh, right. Another classic error. This one was not intentional, but it's just good. But you'll do this until the end of time. Right. When you do something, remember to print it out. Right. It's super common. Why isn't my program printing something? Right. I have to actually print something. Right. So I've got to go biggest HP mon and biggest HP. Right. Then that was autocomplete over there in action, which is why I like VS Code. Let me go ahead and now just kind of show you the entirety of this, right? So we've got data, we read the lines, we declare, hey, this is the biggest HP, this is the Pokemon with the most HP, and then let's go ahead and figure those out. Okay, so now we want to go ahead and run these. And indeed, Blissey does have the largest HP. Blissey being this very cute, adorable hospital egg kind of Pokemon. It's very cute. It's the evolution of Chansey, of course. So, all right. So now with regards to that, so there's a lot of fun kind of stuff we can try to do with this and with this kind of analysis, right? And this is just basically looking through, but this is basically when the kind of way that working with files works. You look through the data, going line by line, and what you'll have to do is you'll have to split the line up by commas and just grab the fields that are relevant. Okay, so now what do we need to do there? So let's see. What could I go here as well? We could go and see basically which Pokemon has the highest combined attack and defense. Figure out which is the beefiest Pokemon. So beefiest is equal to 0, and beefiest. I shouldn't mix that. But here what we're doing is basically to figure out what the beefiest mon is, and I'm breaking a bunch of my conventions here poorly, which by using underscores and stuff like that. Beefiest mon is equal to, and so we'll define the beefiest as to which has the best combined attack and defense, right? The best attack and defense combined. To do that, right, attack is index 4, sorry, index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and defense is 5. So attack is equal to int Pokemon 4 defense Pokemon 5. All right, and now we could figure out which is the beefiest Pokemon by adding a different another if statement in here. If attack plus defense, because again, we're looking for the best Pokemon with best combined attack and defense, which is something I don't actually know off the top of my head, is greater than if the best is greater than beefiest, then beefiest becomes attack plus defense, and beefiest mon which I think biggest mon, so I should probably change that to beefiest underscore mon, right? Is equal to Pokemon. Sorry, not Pokemon, equal to name. And now what we'll do is that we will print out beefiest mon and their beefiest score. So the Pokemon with the best combined attack and defense is Aggron in Mega Aggron form, which is 370. Somehow lower than I expected for it. But so we can do this kind of analysis. Now, it's interesting what becomes tricky in time, which is like figuring out what the, like, if you wanted to find out what the, Pokemon with the highest, the 10 Pokemon with the highest attack, or that becomes a bit trickier because that requires some sorting. You either have to sort all your Pokemon by a certain value, Or you have to do, or you have to keep track of multiple variables in a list, like keep track of your top 10 values. And basically, if it's bigger than any of them, you replace it with that one. So that's one way to do that. Now, I could go there, but I want to actually go ahead and talk about the other function we can do with these kind of things, with these files, which is writing files. In other programming languages, it's also a pain. And I need to emphasize just how painless this is compared to other languages, okay? In Java, what you need to do is, first off, it would have to be in public static void main, right? Because in all programs and even then, that would need to be in like public example, right? And these are required, this is required in every kind of program that basically that you have it in a class over here. And then you need a string args. Again, this is Java, so you can ignore this completely. But I need I need this framework, which is generally automatically generated by the IDE. But if you're not working in IDE, you have to write it yourself, like I just did. I need all this just to start programming. Just Blackmagic, okay? That's the one thing I don't like about Java when it comes to being an introductory programming language, is that you have to say, but you got to say these magic words for the program to work. Okay, so how do I get to read? I'll need to use scanner. And I need to import that if I'm going to use it. Import scanner. Sorry, you can't just import it. I have to say java.util.scanner. I've got to import it like that. And now that I've got it, I can say scanner is equal to new scanner. And then I can say new file. And then the file name. The name of the file would go right there. Which in this case would be Pokemon.csv. But that's not all. This will actually generate a possible file not found exception. So I either have to add a throws exception over here, or I have to put this all in a try catch block. Try catch exception E. Well, and I should mention that this just simply finds the file. I haven't read anything from it yet. Now to read the file, what I typically need to do in Java, recognize that I've done it in Java. Done enough syntax analysis on it. So now that I've got that to read it, I'll do something like while scanner dot has next line is equal to, string line, because you have to declare what type it is. String line is equal to scanner dot next line. And now I've read the line of text from a file. This just gets me one line at a time, like read lines, except that it isn't stored for me. But anyway, yeah, it's a lot. Python makes it real easy. It's 2 lines. You open the file and then you throw read lines or read at it. Very nice. And don't get me started on file writing in Java in here, because that's a pain. So that's what we're going to do now. So please don't necessarily follow along with the file writing, because what we're going to talk about is file writing. And unless you like having a bunch of useless files pop up across your system, don't necessarily do that. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as file writing example.py. Okay. So file writing works similarly. I can just simply say target is equal to, or rather, I'll go ahead and call it file. File is equal to open, and then the file I'd like to write to, okay? Let's call it hello.txt, so that will open up in a text editor. And then to write a file, you just put it in, well, we did, this was read, right? So to write a file, you use W. Again, principle of least surprise here. Okay. Now to write actual text, to do that, I just simply say file dot write hello, comma, world. Okay. Save it, and now I'll run it. And let's see, did I get another file pop up? I don't know. And yes, I did. Now, the polite thing to do, though, is that after you do that, you say file.close. Once you're done with the file, it's always polite to close it up, to tell the program, hey, that file we just opened up, let's close it up. We're done with it. I'm not going to play with it anymore. This is the polite thing to do over here. Okay. So I've went ahead. Now we've got this hello. And so now we've written a new file called hello world. Sorry, hello.txt that has a the text hello world in it, right? And I can add to this file, hi, how is it going? Okay, and I'm modifying this file for a specific reason, because when I run this again, I'll go over to this hello world.txt and notice that this hello.txt, and notice that everything is gone that I typed in. It just simply did hello world. So what write does is that it writes a new file called hello.txt. Okay, it writes a new file, which means that if you have a file there already, it's going to overwrite it. Make sense? Now, that said, you can't necessarily like go in and write a script that's going to just remove essential things from the system necessarily. Okay. Because there's administrative protections that you'd have to be running as administrator for, but that doesn't mean you can't do nasty things with writing with files. So at this point, that I should just point out and mention, if you decide to mess with somebody else's computer stuff in general, be it accessing their account or sabotaging their data, the U.S. Justice Department, I think, classifies pretty much all those as felonies. Like, you know, so don't intentionally mess with people's data. Just don't, right? Messing with people's data is like messing with their papers, right? Only it's electronic, so people don't understand it nearly as well, so it's scarier. Okay? So just be aware of that. Hacking is bad. Or rather, I should say cracking is bad, because hacking and these are different syntactical subtleties, but basically maliciously operating on other people's data is bad. Accessing people's accounts without their authorization is bad. Don't do those things. So that's just the disclaimer there. Yes.
Not disagreeing with you, but isn't that a really quick way to get a job interview with the government, though? They sometimes take you. Like, if you're really good at it.
I think that might have been the old days. The new, I'm not sure what it is. The new with the.
I feel like I remember hearing the popular requirements.
Yeah, those are in the old days, I think. These days, though, I mean, if you're an American citizen with a computer science degree working for an alphabet agency, CIA, NSA, you know, they've got an alphabet a designation, FBI. It's if you're an American citizen and you know you can pass a drug test, these are good jobs. And honestly, it's in the drug test, I should mention, it's not because there's any like moral thing about, you know, about drug usage. It's actually all about whether or not there's leverage on you. Nobody wants you because doing drugs is illegal. They can't have anybody being able to blackmail you with the fact that you're doing an illegal activity. So, but seriously, the benefits of working for a government agency are pretty good. So definitely something to consider. But the I in fact had one of my aunts, in fact, her father worked for the CIA. This was not known until after the fact he died. So, so, you know, it does sometimes require playing things rather close to the chest, but yeah. So that being said, like running it on your own stuff, that's not going to be a problem. And accidents are accidents, right? Especially if you're student learning. But like malicious intent to like go in and like try to change your grades, you know, don't try to do that. Okay. That's not to scare you off or anything, but file writing is when we start getting into the more malicious things, because, you know, like let's talk about malware. One of the most virulent forms of malware these days is what's called ransomware, right? Where you have, where basically you get a program that encrypts all of your data, okay, or a lot of your documents, and says, hey, pay me Bitcoin, so that, and I'll give you the key to unlock your data, okay? And this typically costs hundreds or thousands of dollars, depending on the fluctuation of Bitcoin. These groups are often linked with Russia. In fact, they specifically, some of these ransomwares have been known to check to make sure that the Windows version, the language on Windows that they are trying to attack is not in Russian, because I kid you not, as long as they don't attack the Russian government, these groups don't attack the Russian government, then you know, Putin doesn't really care. So, so anyway, so this is where, again, where we can kind of get into the stuff that's dangerous. What we're doing today is not dangerous. It's super benign. This is teaching, but I mean, when we're talking about file writing, it's the appropriate time to bring up this kind of stuff. So we've created a file, and W writes a new file. There's also one more writing mode, which is the A mode. A stands for append, which means add to the end. So if I run this, you'll see that now we've got hello world. And if I run it again with append, where I've just changed the W to an A, right? Each time I run it, it adds hello world. Now notice that this isn't working like print line, right? Print, it would create a new line. But here, when I run it, it just tacks on to the end of the text that we've already won. So when you're writing a file, the only inconvenient thing you have to remember is that if you want to write a file, right, you should put in new lines when you where you need to. So now notice we've got a new line there. So when I run it again, it says hello world again on the new line. Now, why would we want to write to a file? If we're generating data, like if our program is running a simulation and generating data, if you're going to be copying that from the terminal or your output and just saving it in a file, it's often just sometimes convenient to just cut that middleman out and just save it automatically, because it's easier to, because again, you might want to be able to save that output. And then typically what you'll do is that, like, especially if you're in scientific papers, is once you get your output, you're going to graph it, which is a different story, but Python has wonderful graph libraries like matplotlib for dealing with stuff like that. So now there is a lot of kind of fun stuff. Now, you can do a lot of things with file reading and writing. Let me go ahead and see. So, sorry, I need to desktop, sorry, documents. And I'm going to give you a preview of what will go on sometime after we get back, even though we're not close to done with class yet. But I want to kind of show you where we're building up to with this, and just kind of the scripts that you can write now that you know how to work with files. Okay. let's see. Sorry, fall 2021. I normally have it here. Ah, okay. So here, go ahead and Japanese downloader. So the idea here, once you kind of get to these to the stuff, is that I've got a script here that we'll eventually go over that goes to so at one point I'm trying to teach myself Japanese, which is a bit tricky. And there's a Japanese program called Irashai, which was developed by Georgia Public Broadcasting for high school students. It was televised. Episodes were 26 minutes long. Bit corny, as some good stuff, as good TV stuff is, but that's educational. But they also had all these worksheets over here, right? You have these worksheets and there's, so you go to the next worksheet, right? Next one, and we've got a worksheet for over here. Okay. So if I want to print out all these worksheets in advance, if I'm going to do it manually, that's a bit of a pain, right? If I'm going to do it manually, that's a bit of a pain. So instead, what I did is that I wrote a program that goes to the URL, uses the file name of that program, and downloads the file and saves those files. See, no such file saved. Oh, right, I have to make a folder called saved for them to store in. That's the other thing. You can save things in a folder, as I'll show you in a bit. There's already one there. Delete. Let's see, no such file or directory. So run it. And let's see, no such file or directory. Why is it saying that? Do I not have the request library? Yeah, it's fine. The point being is that I've downloaded all these files. I wrote a script, it downloads all these files. And then I wrote a separate Python script that opens up each of these files and uses a separate library to merge them together into one big PDF. Because now that I've got 74 I've got 74 of these things, right? I don't want to download, I don't want to have to print 74 separate documents. I'd rather just print one document. Which was, now notice the difference over here when we work with these kind of files, that it says that it's an RB file. Sorry, that it says open. This is the file name, right? Same thing. The only thing is that I'm saying put it in a folder and add this to the end of it. Notice that I've added a B over here. That's for when I'm working with binary files, which is what PDF files are, because I can't read PDF files directly, right? I can't, PDF files don't, right? A PDF file doesn't look right. It looks like this. This isn't human readable. This isn't readable line by line. This is all just a bunch of instructions on how to draw things on a file. Right? It's a bunch of gibberish. So that's why it's a binary file. But this is the kind of things that we'll be looking at when we get back. For right now, though, we're gonna work on creating the world's dumbest malware. Okay, which is that that malware basically either attacks the resource, some resource you have, or depletes some resource. one resource that we have on this on the computer is space. So I wouldn't follow this along unless you want to create about a million files on your computer that are useless. But there's nothing stopping us from writing a for loop to open up files and writing it again and again. So what I could do here is, again, so now I'm just going to put a big fat warning. Do not run, right? Okay. Just to kind of show you. File, and what we'll do is we'll make a for loop. For I in range, and let's start by doing 1,000. So 1 up to and including 1,000. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a file. We're going to open this file. And I'm going to go ahead and I'll make a new folder to put these in called outputs. Okay. And I'm going to say open up outputs. Go into the folder outputs. So I've created a new folder for this to go into. Now I can make a folder using a Python script as well, but I don't want to overcomplicate this more than it has to be. And also by putting in with that, if it crashes because you don't have the appropriate folder, it makes it harder for you to accidentally run it, right? So, and we just simply create write, and we're going to also say, rather than giving it a name over here, we're going to say the name is plus turn I into a string plus str, sorry, and then plus .txt to turn it into a file. File.write actually, let's make a for loop. For in range 1,000, we'll do this 1,000 times, and we'll do a nice shining reference over here. Caps lock on, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, right? That's the reference to The Shining, Stephen King, classic horror over there. And now let's and we also want to put in a new line. Okay, so we write that, and we'll keep writing it, and then we'll close the file. Okay. And then it will open up a new file when I run this. So now I'm going to run the thing that says do not run on it, and let's see what happens. So over here in my folder over here in outputs, we'll see that we've got a bunch of 44 kilobytes files slowly being created. Right, and they create all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Right. Like I said, it's the world's dumbest malware because, you know, I could just, you know, to counter the attack, what do? I delete the files. And let's see, it's made 1,000. It's made 1,000 of them, which means that the total amount of data that I wrote is about 42 megabytes. Now, this isn't exactly a big issue because, again, it's like, again, this isn't too much of an issue, except that most computers these days work off of something called flash memory, which, in other words, solid state drives have a limited number of a limited but extremely high, I should emphasize in case you're worried about this, a limited but extremely high number of writes that it can do. For instance, I've got a 2 terabyte drive at home on my main computer, and it's rated to basically have for a minimum of 300 terabytes worth of data written onto it. But this does use up some of that small amount. 42 megabytes of that small amount. But this is more of a, so this is less of a, this is how to build malware, but more of a warning, because you might make big programs that accidentally pump out tons and tons of output, right? It's possible for you to really create something and have it make a lot of output. and to do that accidentally. And if that's the case, just kill the program and mop up what's there. Also, again, don't accidentally overwrite your data when you're with this. And I mean accidentally overwrite by like, okay, you run this, it generated data. Don't run the program again unless you want your data overwritten, right? That kind of stuff. Just the main purpose of this and exercising, oh, this is the dumbest malware ever, is to just emphasize that whenever you're dealing with something with writing data, you're getting into the issue where bugs start escaping the confines of the program and start getting into other files, right? Any bugs you put in now might be somewhere else. Like you might write the file to the wrong location, and thus when you try to read it from a different program, you have no idea where it is. Or the formatting for the data you put in was wrong. So just always be kind of cautious when we're doing file reading and writing. So with that, I want to, before we go over to spring break, I have a small gift. A small gift in the sense of why don't I talk about the very first question on the final exam. There's 3 questions on the final exam, multiple parts for each of those questions, but I will tell you what the first one is. And I will it's always a variation of this question, this was what it was the first time I gave it, which is, here's a file with a bunch of social security numbers spread around it. Please read the file and remove all the social security numbers from it. 10 points of that, and actually more specifically, it was read the file and write a new file with all the social security numbers removed or replaced with redacted or censored or whatever, right? So it was the rubrics that's in front of you on that final exam says 5 points for successfully opening and reading the file, and 5 points for writing the file, regardless of the contents. So if you can just remember how to open a file and read it, and open a file and write it, that's 10 points out of 100 on your final exam. You'd be surprised how many students leave those 10 points just lying at the table because they completely freak out there. File reading and writing. Another semester, I did something along the lines of another semester. It was, here's a health insurance company, right? And here's the way their health insurance numbers look. Okay. Read the file, look for numbers that fit that health insurance format, right? And write a new file with the term redacted on this, right? Now we haven't gotten into, now you can currently do that with what you know, but it's a pain. Trust me, it's a real pain to do it with just straight up if-else statements and doing standard string detection. So, however, once we get back, after we learn dictionaries, we'll talk about regular expressions. And regular expressions will turn that program into like a 30 to 50 line program into a 10-line program. So the first program I always like to emphasize reading and writing files with that first question, and specifically reading some kind of file and modifying, typically getting rid of private information like student email addresses. Okay, so that will be about a third of the final exam. Again, the final exam is only 3 questions because those 3 questions are broken down into like multiple parts. Another part of that question would be like 10 points for correctly identifying, those social security numbers. And another 10 points is for being able to replace those numbers. So again, there will be very clear guidelines on that final exam. And I know that's very early to think about it, but I figure if I give that to you, you'll know. I will tell you what the other 2 are in time as we get to those subjects, but they are kind of holistic, the questions, right? You can see that tests a lot of things. That tests, can you open files and manipulate strings which is a lot. And there's a lot of ways to manipulate strings. You can use for loops, you can use some kind of iteration. Or you can use the fact, or you can use stuff that we've looked up. Now it is 3:10. And it's fair, and that's early, but I've accomplished what I've needed to today. So I'm willing to wish you to have a good break. Yeah, enjoy Elden Ring if you're playing it. Otherwise, take care.
Hey,
and
Professor,
if
did
you have
you just submit
questions-
this?
Yes, give me a second.
Oh, no worries.
Yes.